Buzz Harris. Some of my partners in crime from the Finance Committee are here tonight. So, can anyone not hear me well if I'm talking like this? Raise your hand if you can't. Shut up. I know the hecklers, or at least I know one of them. Now, I did make a few copies of the warrant, so if there are folks who came tonight and don't have one and would like one, please let me know. Okay. You can pass one back there, and who else? Here. Anybody else need a copy?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Paul wants one over there.
Two people behind me coming, so.
All right. I think I did you two?
You did.
Okay, could you pass one back to Paul? Yes. There you go. All right. So I only made a few copies. I was hoping folks would bring, you know, their phones, their tablets, their stone tablets, whatever it may be.
We have Wi-Fi. It's free.
Okay, yeah, so there is free Wi-Fi in here, and it is up. Oh, well, if you, geez, you know, if you want to tell me I need to use the mic, you can just raise your paw at me. You don't have to tell Debbie to tell me. It's okay. Okay. So, tonight, we're going to be going over the warrant. Hypothetically, that's going to be all the articles. I've invited, I think, most of the folks who are sponsoring particular articles that have like special sponsors. Let me tell you how I'd like to do things tonight and see if it works for everybody. What I'd like to do is facilitate the conversation heavily. And what that would mean is letting the person who's the best to explain a warrant article talk about it for 5 minutes. And shortly before the 5 minutes, I'll stick a hand in the air so they can see it. And then when it's 5 minutes, I'll ask them to wrap up. And then when people have comments about it, I'd like to have comments be 2 minutes. Now, if your soul is stirred in such a way about some article that you want more than 2 minutes, then you can let me know that, and I will come back to you, or if you really are going to suffer if you don't get more time, then I'll see if I can accommodate that. But what I'd like to do, and the reason I'm proposing this, is not keep us here all night long. There's going to be a lot of time to debate the articles and have discussions about them at town meeting, and this is just a review of them so that you know what's coming. Is that way of proceeding okay with folks? Everybody like nod your head or raise your hand in the air and say, no.
That sounds great.
That sounds good? Okay, I didn't see any no's. You are such a contrary old so-and-so. But that's okay, we like you anyway. Okay, so why don't we proceed that way? Now, you know, some of the articles are basically housekeeping that we do every year. Those will probably go by reasonably quickly. Others, I'm sure there'll be some discussion about. I do have one request, which is that we be civil with one another. And if you are not, I will remind you. Hopefully in a civil fashion, but at least a noticeable fashion. So, you know, disagreement is to be expected and is fine. You know, feeling strongly about these is also fine, but I do ask you to be respectful of one another and assume that people are acting from good intent, at least as they see it. Does that all make sense? Okay, cool. Let's start going through. Okay, Article 1. Unless there's somebody else that wants to explain snow and ice, I think I'll do it. Okay, this is a pretty straightforward article. It's just about covering the deficit for snow and ice removal for the town from this last winter. You may know that the state allows deficit spending on this article. The town of Berlin does budget what we think we're going to need each year, but we can't always predict what the winter's going to be like, and there will be a deficit to cover. So that's what that one is about. Any questions about that one? Okay. The highway department will be delighted to know that's not controversial.
Is there in fact a deficit?
Yes, there is. The deficit, last I looked, was about $30,000. Yeah, but we have the money to cover it. It's okay. All right, Articles 2 through 6 are going to be moved together, but I think we can go through them individually. Let's see, Article 2, to see if the town will vote to fill all vacancies and choose all necessary town officers, not required to be chosen by ballot or take any action relative thereto. Chris, what is that all about anyway?
Sorry, I'm speaking for pencil.
Okay. I've actually never totally understood what that article is about. Other than if there are open offices, we should
That
fill
one
them or
might be a
something.
question for Barry.
Okay. Is Barry here? Mr. Moderator, where are you? Okay. Does anyone know what that one's about? Who's in the room? Well, then we'll wait and find out at town meeting. How's that? Okay. Number 3, to see if the town will vote to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the selectmen to borrow in anticipation of reimbursement by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for the repair of roads and bridges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a pro forma one, just to make sure that we will choose to accept state money that comes to the town for road repairs, as far as I know. Any thoughts, questions about that?
It's on there every year.
Huh?
It's on there every year.
I know. Okay, number 3. See if the town will, oh no, that's number, hold on.
You skipped 3.
I did skip 3. See, I have like these trifocal glasses, but they're not working all that well for me. To see what action the town will take upon the printed reports of the officers and committees of the town for the year 2018, or take any action relative thereto. Chris, do you know what, or Chris or Lisa, do you know what's up with that one?
I think that one is in case someone did not get a report into the annual town report committee, and they'd like to do it on the floor.
Okay, so if someone's tardy, Chris said, in turning in their report to the annual town report committee, then we can make them stand up and read it to us if we are feeling generous and possibly throw vegetables. Okay. I think I did Article 4, so I'm going to go to 5. To see if the town will vote pursuant to Mass General Law 44, Chapter, et cetera, to establish annual expenditure limits for fiscal year 2020 for the following revolving funds listed in the revolving funds bylaw. And there's a list. And it looks like it's principally about the library, recreation, dog licensing, and the town hall. This is another one that's on there every year. Anybody have any questions about that one? Anybody forget to get your dog licensed, so we should sick Eloise on you? No? Okay. All right, number 6. I'm gonna have to take my glasses off because... text. To see if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to expend from the highway department expense budget under et cetera, a sum not to exceed $300 for insect and pest control, and a sum not to exceed $2,000 for Dutch elm disease control. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Any questions about that?
You still have any Dutch elms?
There's one right on the corner.
That's a good answer. It sounds like we do. Okay. Now we're getting into the ones that are not always on every warrant. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to approve the establishment of a special education reserve fund at the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can tell you what that one is about. It's pretty much what it says. Special education students can, a kid can have an accident or a disease can develop or they can move into town, or anyway, we end up with a student for whatever set of reasons in their lives needs special education. And that's often expensive. The range in cost can be from a few tens of thousands of dollars a year up to the low hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for the school, depending on the need of that particular student to be educated. And as you might guess from those numbers, if you take a look at the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District, my watch is not on my arm, never mind. That's hard to plan for. And so the school district suggested, and I think the finance committee, and I think the select board also, you didn't review this?
I don't believe so, but I think Angela's here somewhere.
Oh, is Angela? Oh, hi Angela, do you want to talk about this, or do you, am I? Huh?
I can.
Okay. How about if I'm not doing a good enough job, let me know.
So far, it's fine.
Okay. Anyway, the idea is to allow the town of Berlin to set aside money on an annual basis, as much as we think prudent and that we can afford, so that when these needs for particular pupils come up, we have money held in reserve to accommodate their need to become educated without breaking the bank for the school and or the town. Did I miss anything?
The only thing I'd add is that it's really for unanticipated special ed costs. Usually when someone moves into district and needs help, and we didn't budget for that.
Yeah.
Also, I want to add, this is thanks to the Baker-Polito administration. It's part of the Municipal Modernization Act a few years ago that towns are able to do this. This year, we're not planning to put any money into the fund. Next year, we most likely will as part of our regular budget process. And then to actually spend the money from the funds, it's a vote of the school committee and a vote of the selectmen from each town.
Okay. Any questions about that?
I have a few questions about this. So, I'm curious, how many students approximately from year to year are in special education?
So the question was how many students each year are involved in special education?
This is for placement that's like we're going to Aspet Valley Collaborative, and I'm not sure of the actual number of students.
Is there a range like 10 to 12 or 40 to 50?
It's not that high.
Okay, I'm just looking for a range, not an exact number.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
I can
Is
that, but I don't
there
know.
also,
No, I don't know.
you know, I appreciate what this fund is for, but is there any corresponding fund for enrichment, something, gifted and talented programs, something on the other end of the spectrum?
There's no like special sanction fund for something like that. I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah.
And
Trish, what is enrichment? What is that?
enrichment is something that's offered to kids who are maybe, it's like advanced placement for different age kids. So if they're not challenged enough in their classroom, then they can be offered an enrichment program. And we had that in Berlin Memorial School, but it got taken away. So that's why I'm asking that question. The other question I have is this going to be proportional, like Berlin, Boylston? This is regional, right?
Yes. Right.
So will the contributions to the fund be proportional? We have less students, we have roughly half the kids in the school system in Boylston. So is it going to be proportional, what we
Put into
give to
the funds, you know. I could be wrong, but I imagine it'll be the similar proportion that we have now currently for Tohoto assessment, which is related to the population of students from each
Okay.
town.
So I guess I'm not really clear why we need this fund. I think that's where I'm getting at.
So if we don't, well, the school department wants to be prudent about, if someone moves into district after the budget's already been voted, and it suddenly can cost, and he's not exaggerating, it can cost up to $200,000.
I understand
And we
that.
need to come up with that money, then the school department runs the risk of having to cut something they don't want to cut. And so that's what we're trying to avoid by establishing this.
Okay, so what I hear what you're saying though is that we have to put a lot of money for a small number of kids, but we're not willing to put into enrichment programs for maybe what could be a larger number of kids.
Yeah.
Is that
I
true?
hear what you're saying, but I don't think it's going to be a large money, a pool of money each year.
That's my next
No,
question.
so-
What do you anticipate the dollar amount contribution?
Yes, you have a question? Or you have answer?
No.
So it seems to me that what we're dealing with is that we are required by law to provide special education. if we don't have a fund to do this, then it has to come out of the budget. If there are insufficient funds in the budget, then then we have to pull funds from somewhere else if that happens in the middle of the year. By establishing a fund, what we do is put money aside such that if we have to do this out of the budget process, there is money allocated for it. While enrichment is an important thing, it is not something that we are required to do out of the budget cycle.
Okay,
This is an emergency fund.
I do understand that completely, but my point is, why don't we put money towards enrichment in this? That's what I'm asking, why don't we put money towards enrichment?
I think what I'll do is just take that back to our superintendent and the admin team and kind of voice your concerns about, it's great that we have to do this, but parents want to see enrichment programs and funding goes towards enrichment.
But that would also be part of the normal budget Right, process. right. It wouldn't be an emergency sort of thing. It would be something that would have to be well thought out
I
beforehand.
do get that,
I would,
that it's an emergency fund, I totally understand that. Do you have a dollar amount, or you don't, a range?
It's
You
not
don't-
being funded.
It's not being
No,
funded this year.
I know
so
it's
I
not
don't
being
know.
funded this year. I'm just curious if have an idea how much it's gonna be. Because you're setting up a fund, you must have an idea how much money you're gonna put into it at some point. Do you not have any idea?
Oh, Bob Connery would be able to respond to that.
Right.
Do you want to bring that information down?
Yeah, I'll bring that information to town.
Okay,
for sure.
because I think it's a reasonable question.
I think it's a reasonable question as somebody whose
Oh,
child.
I said it was a reasonable question.
No, I know, but I think my question is reasonable just because as somebody whose child has suffered from lack of enrichment programs in the school system, you're asking me to basically vote for this. So I just want to I want to be convinced. I don't want to just say this is a great idea, because from my point of view, it's not a great idea.
Okay. I want to go to Peter, and then if you want to speak, please raise your hand. I'm going to try to close this discussion soon in the interest of time. But Peter, go ahead, please.
Is this money, does this money sunset, or does it roll over into each year and swell?
Peter, the point of it is that it's intended to be a savings account against people moving into town.
No, I get it, but if X is put in this year and Y is put in next year and Z is put in the following year,
Yeah.
does it swell if it's not used, or is it sunset and return to the general fund?
No, it will stay in the fund until it's needed. That's the purpose of having an emergency savings fund for, if a deafblind, I used to work at Perkins School for the Blind. If a deafblind kid were to move into Berlin and be able to function in the public schools, which rarely they can, or a blind and disabled kid, then the cost for their education could be $200,000 a year
Got it,
with the services they need.
thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, okay. Anything else on this that people feel like hasn't already been said and you feel like it's an important contribution before I go on? Okay, thank you. I'm going to talk to my eye doctor about better bifocals or trifocals, and I've got to not fall off the stage.
Would you like more light, please?
No,
Turn those on.
it's not a matter of light, but thank you. It's a matter of being terribly, terribly nearsighted. Okay. Outstanding 2018 Town Reports, Article 8. This sounds like a repeat of one that we had in the housekeeping to meet. Here,
One is accepting the reports, and this one is actually if somebody forgot their report. The last one is the town
Okay.
accepts the reports. This one is
Okay, thanks, Lisa. So we might save our rotten fruit and vegetables for this one. Okay. Article 9, the fiscal year 20 budget. The Finance Committee will present the budget. It's, I think, going to be mailed out to you pretty soon. I know the Town Report Committee has had it for about a week now. So you should expect to see it soon.
the annual town report is also online.
Oh, cool.
It's
Okay.
it's there.
It's online.
So it is online. You can pull it down now. So this is where we'll ask for your approval on the budget. Okay. Article 10, Chapter 90 Highway Funding. See if the town will vote to appropriate and apportion Chapter 90 transportation bond issue monies and the amount certified by the Commonwealth or take any action relative thereto. That's another piece just relative to highway funding. Anybody have questions about that?
Yeah,
Yes?
last year that funding went for building a new barn, they didn't do any paving. This year, are they gonna pave? Because there are some pretty crummy streets.
I sincerely hope so. You could ask Dave Smith.
What
Who's
was
the-
the question?
His question was, what he said was, last year they used this money to build the town barn. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's what he says. And asked if this year they'd be doing any paving.
That money, I think, specifically goes to roads, does it not?
It's Chapter 90
Yeah,
transportation bond issue monies.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that goes specifically to.
That goes to Chapter 90 roads,
Yep.
which are generally roads that connect us with another town.
Okay.
And that's an amount that's a grant from the state, and that's all it's used for.
Did they pave last year anywhere?
It's used for town, used for roads.
Well, we were allowed to use a portion of
Or you
it for
use-
the town barn.
Was used for.
Ta-da.
What's
Yeah.
that? What did we use for it? I don't
Okay,
know.
Chris said we did use a portion of it last year. for
Just
the
a
town
portion
barn.
of it. I don't believe, we didn't use it all. We were trying to make sure that we came to the number that we needed for the town barn. And we used a small portion of it. Keith had planned to do that, which he did confirm with the state was okay.
Okay, so the part B of that question was, did we do any paving of roads last year? And are we going to do any paving of roads this year with that money?
Yes, we would do paving of roads this coming year.
Okay. Anything else about that? Okay. Article 11. This is one of my favorites. It's the $50 from the Anna Hunt Trust Fund to the library. Bless Anna Hunt. We give that $50 to the library every year. Okay. Are any questions about that? Anna Hunt, I assume, is not here. I suspect that this is her estate. Seeing no Anna Hunts, I'll move on.
It's an old trust fund, and its terms required that that a portion of it go for the cemetery and a portion of it go for some other use in the town, and that the town has to determine it.
Okay.
So that's why it turns up on the warrant every year, is because the town has to decide how it's spent.
Okay, so if you're
Not
generous,
some particular
if
thing.
any of you would like to have your estates be generous to the town, please make sure we don't have to vote on it at town meeting. We'll be grateful. I mean, we love Anna Hunt, but, you know, it would be nice if we could do that otherwise. Okay, Article 12, Cable Access Committee PEG spending. What does PEG stand for? Well, it's the cable access related money. I don't know what the acronym stands for. And they are asking for $48,500. That money, by the way, comes from the cable companies. As you may or may not know, local cable access, like the folks, Mr. Bradley over here filming me right now, waiting to see if I do anything really fun so that the ratings will go up. They get their funding from a portion of funds from the local cable companies. So this is not actually coming out of the town's budget. But we approve it anyway.
He probably could give you any more information if anybody.
Do you want to add anything to my somewhat flip explanation?
I think you did fine.
He thinks I did fine, okay. Even when I'm being flippant, I try to be accurate if I possibly can. Okay. Number should be 13. We'll flip the
13
page.
on the next page.
Yep.
Septic system.
Okay. Number 13 is the library septic system. I know this one well. So I won't read the whole text. But basically, do you want me to give my explanation, or would you, as a library trustee, Charlene, like to do that? I'll give you the option.
I can do that.
Okay, can you do it in 5 minutes?
Sure.
Go for it. Do you want to use the microphone? I can't be the only one on camera, okay?
Hi, everybody. My name is Charlene DeKelliger. I'm one of the 3 library trustees. And this article, while it is actually money that gets sort of expended through the select board, is for the purposes of replacing our septic system at the library. Our library officially failed its septic inspection. Paul McKelk, I think, may have signed the report on that. So we have a deadline to replace the septic system of September 2020. So we need money to do that. We have done some research, but it's still a little bit difficult to figure out exactly what it's going to cost, because we really need to have a design engineer come and say, okay, I've looked at the site, this is what I see, and this is exactly what you need. So we need a tight tank system, which the Mass Department of Environmental Protection has given us a special, okay to do this, because normally they don't do that. And the types of tight tanks are, there's a variety of materials, but they're specified by the DEP, so it's either going to be concrete or some kind of special, presumably very tough plastic. The old septic has to come out, the new one has to come in. So, and we don't know what's under there. So we are asking, we did a bit of research and we decided that $100,000 is probably going to be enough to take care of this. Obviously, if we don't replace the septic, we would not be able to keep the library open.
Yes, you did. Any questions, thoughts about that? Yeah, Jim.
Quick question. That's a quick, what do you call it, tight tank? So will there be funding in place for all the pumping that will come from that? Or will 100,000 include that? Just curious.
So pumping is an ongoing expense. This is the 100,000 is a one-time. This is for any expenses related to replacing the septic tank. My understanding is one of the things that goes on this tank will be an alarm system that goes off when it's 3/5 full. I think our recent design flow or water flow tests seem to indicate that we don't have a whole lot of flow, so it's not going to need to be emptied very often at all. And it's one of those things of we don't really have a choice, and this is pretty much the system that we have to get.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Where did that figure come from, $100,000?
So we called a couple of people kind of in the business, David Ross Associates, and we also I looked at the CMR to see what the requirements are and see what's the minimum size tank that's required. There's a whole huge chart which does not include library buildings, but basically the minimum capacity is a 2,000 gallon tank. So what we don't know is how much ledge might be under or in the area where we have to do the digging or whatever. So there's pieces of the process which includes the design engineering. I think we got an estimate for that. We don't know what kind of tight tank is going to be recommended. I suspect a concrete tank is probably going to be more expensive than this, special plastic tank, but again, we're going to do what's required. And the removal of the old piece. So we kind of got a range. David Smith also gave some input. The highway superintendent, he thought somewhere between 75 and 100,000. So that's where that estimate came from. But it is a broad estimate.
Will the work be put out for bid?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Because frankly, that's an obscene amount of money for a tight tank system. I just can't imagine I can spend that much money.
So my understanding is that commercial or public building systems are different than residential systems, and I think what people tend to be familiar with, if they're at all familiar with tie tanks, is a residential system. And so, you know, we have different, you know, and more stringent requirements. Obviously, we're not going to spend any money we don't have to spend, and there is a sunset clause on the whole figure. So anything we don't spend by, I think it's like June 2021, goes back to the town.
I have a question. Charlene, I know a little bit about this, but is some of this money also thought to do something with the whole public water supply in the well, or is this just the septic?
Just the septic, just the septic. Yes.
Because the well needs to be replaced as well, correct?
Separate issue, and it's unclear at this point, but the septic is definitely urgent. We definitely, it was failed. Paul can confirm that if anybody wants him to do that, he's here.
It sounds like a bid was not sought. Was there a reason for
It
that?
will be. We have no money right now to do such a thing, and a bid is going to be paid for. The bidding process is part of what will be paid for by this
But
$100,000.
as a gentleman whose name I've forgotten, Richard said, wouldn't it make sense to seek out a bid and then get a clue?
Well, that is in the $100,000. We cannot get a bid that we can't pay for.
But you can't get a quote.
Peter, can you hold on, please? Why don't we take Paul? 'Cause I think he may have a response to that.
You can't get a bid until you get some engineering design work, and then you can go out to bid. So the initial expense is to get initial design work. They'll do some digging and testing and see what's capable. And I don't mean to trump Charlene, but the 100,000, I would attach worst case scenario to that. I personally believe that that's going to be way more than enough. But because of the unknowns, ledge and things like that, they were just covering their backside.
Yeah, and there are space considerations. That's a really tough site to work on. You could end up having to go under the pavement there and have to replace that. There's a lot of things that could potentially happen. So there's contingency if we run into trouble.
I also want to add that this year, and I would like to thank the select board for this, they've adopted a practice that many other towns use, which is putting a sunset clause into warrant articles that have large amounts of money in them, which we've not done in the past. We have some warrant articles still hanging around out there in somebody's back pocket. June probably knows where most of them are, but we're not even sure June knows where all of them are. That are long in the tooth and that show up and someone says, oh, look, I have $10,000 from the 1962 town meeting. That's an exaggeration, obviously. But any monies that are not used will come back to the town at the point of that sunset clause, just so you know. Okay, if possible, I'd like to move on from this, but Greg, yep.
Yeah, one more quick question. Is it possible to quantify what's going on with the well prior to the vote on the septic?
Would you like me to? Go ahead.
They're two different issues.
I understand that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, and the well for now seems to be passing whatever, requirements, whereas the septic failed. So, yeah.
Okay, Peter, go ahead, but please be brief.
Fast. But doesn't it make sense, I think Greg has a point, to know if we've got to spend another 10,000, 200,000, 500,000 on a well, which seems absurd. In a year or 2 years or 4 years, wouldn't it make sense to know both those numbers? I think that's his point. I think it does make a certain amount of sense.
Well, here's, I don't disagree with you, but there's one salient point to know, which is that the Department of Environmental Protection has given the library a certain and sure date by which they either have to fix the septic system or shut down. And so far, DEP hasn't said the well has to be changed, anything at all. I think they're still evaluating it. So I agree with you that in an ideal universe, that would be ideal. That would be nice. But in this circumstance, we don't have that. Things haven't lined up in a way that permit that preferable way of doing things. Okay. It's okay if I move on? Okay.
Compacted.
Yes, compactor. The transfer station wants to make our large bales of trash smaller. So we have an elderly compactor that's on its last legs, and Article 14 is to replace that compactor. Any questions about that? Paul, anything you want to add?
The compactor in question that's going to be replaced is somewhere around 25 or 30 years old. We're starting to spend, well, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year to keep it running, and that just doesn't make sense, because when that goes down, we are faced with having to haul the other unit, whether it's a third full, a quarter full, and we're just throwing money out the door.
Yep.
Since we put the second compactor in a couple of years ago, most loads are going out at 10 or 11 ton. Previously, they've been going out at 5 or 6, so there's an economy in terms of trucking costs, which just makes sense. It's not a payback in 1 year, but over the course of time, it definitely does.
Yeah. This is a conversation we had in the Finance Committee. He said, compactor years are kind of like cat years. It's 30 years old, it's long past its go to the pet cemetery date. Okay. Next, Article 15, the Cemetery Commission wants to buy a mower. I know a little bit about it, but Barry, you're on the Cemetery Commission. Would you like me to give an explanation, or would you prefer to? Barry has no strong feeling.
We've been using old junk for years, and we've kept it running and kept it running, and it really is getting counterproductive. About 6 or 7 years ago, we bought a new mower, which we've been using mainly in the time since. And this would be, which has now got a lot of hours on it, because it's been used almost exclusively. And this one would give us 2 good units, and we would get rid of 2 or 3 of the old pieces of junk that we've kept around. And the one that we bought most recently has proven to be very, very satisfactory for us, so we're buying another one like it.
And Barry, my understanding is these units are designed specifically to be able to handle tight turns and things like that in the cemetery?
It's smaller than the kind of things that we use, like to do the fields, because you're not doing wide expanses as much of the time. Mostly you're doing areas between stones, and you've got to be able to get in between stones in different places. So it is one that's particularly good for maneuverability and for being of a size that is optimal for our work.
Okay. Any questions about that? Yes, sir.
Is that going out to bid, or will they go out to bid for competitive bids?
We will get some quotes on it. We did that the last time. We do have one, we do have an estimate in hand, which is where we got our number from, but we will also be getting some other numbers.
So there is
required 3.
There is a specification.
What?
There is a specification that you
Yes.
asked.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what it's a Walker mower that we've used, and it's really worked out very well for us. It's a diesel unit, and I'm trying to remember.
Is that answer sufficient so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else about mowers? The goal being to keep the grass short and not knock over great grandma's headstone?
Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is the quote we have right now is actually a little lower than the one we bought 6 or 7 years ago. Can't believe it, but it actually is a little lower.
I mean, in my experience on the Finance Committee, the Cemetery Commission is actually pretty frugal. Okay. Council on Aging, Software and Hardware. Article 16 is to buy some hardware and software for the Council on Aging so that they can digitize their records, of which evidently they've got quite a lot that are in boxes and in writing, and be able to use that to provide their services more effectively. It's $5,300. Anybody here from the Council on Aging?
No, but we did see, we actually had a presentation on it today, and it would really help. It actually spits out the report that they have to do for the state every year. If they keep their data appropriately, it would help them with the bus dispatching. It would be very valuable to sort of streamline the process for council on aging.
Any questions about that? Okay, thank you, Lisa. All right, next is a highway service utility truck. As you may recall, some years ago, we put town vehicles on a schedule for replacement. This one's actually coming in a year early because the one it is replacing is not feeling well and is not performing in the way that we needed to. So, and we had the money this year to be able to do it. So I urged the select board to go ahead and buy it at the request of the highway department. Any questions about that one? Okay, and thank you for doing that. I know it was out of cycle a little bit. Oh, I'm getting the grandma look. We did it from good intentions, Chris, I promise. Okay. Article 18, highway hot top. That is to plug holes in the residential and other town roads. Happens every year. Any questions about it?
How much is it compared to other years?
How much is it compared to
Other years.
other uses?
Years.
Other years, it is the same. It's been $70,000 a year since I've been on the finance committee, which is about 5 years.
Does that relate to a certain number of miles of road?
I don't happen to know how they calculate it, but you can ask Dave Smith if you want.
Well, Dave.
His email address is on the town website. Okay.
I actually did ask the question of
Mhm.
Dennis a year or two ago, and he said that's all that he thinks the town would stomach.
Okay. Well, if you think the town would stomach more and you have concerns about potholes, let the highway department know. All right. Article 19, Planning Board Master Plan. The Planning Board puts this in every year. I think it's is Tim here or anyone from the Planning Board? It's every 4 or 5 years that the Planning Board pays to revise the town's master plan, which is used to comply with a variety of state laws and programs and regulations. And rather than coming to us every 4 or 5 years with the lump sum, they just do $5,000 a year. That has worked well for them in the town.
They actually do a different section of the report every year. So they something and do a part of the report every year.
Then you know that even better. You know that better than I do. Lisa said they actually do a portion of the report every year. Thank you. See, I thought they were saving up. Tim was fibbing to me where I wasn't paying close attention. Okay. Anything else about that? Article 20, Fire EMS Pumper Tanker. When your budget arrives, there'll be a letter from the Finance Committee. It is shorter than usual. But one thing that we wrote in it is to thank Paul Spakowski, the outgoing fire chief, who was our interim chief for a few years. He looked at all the buildings around town, commercial and residential, and went and looked at our fleet of fire vehicles and said, we could cut the fleet by one vehicle, get a different kind of vehicle that will fill the same niche for the town's fire suppression needs, and not have to buy one of those pieces of fire equipment ever again. So Paul made sure that a $500,000 to $1 million piece of fire apparatus is not going to show up in our capital plan. And this $440,000 pumper tanker will take the place of 2 vehicles that we have now. Any questions about that one?
Jim, Sarah, can you?
Okay. Jim, do you want to say?
Do you want me to talk? Because I don't need to talk.
No, you don't have to talk if you don't want to. Go ahead.
So firefighting in a synopsis, you see all these big fire trucks. We have attack engines which go to get in fast and knock down the fire. And on the other prong, we have water supply vehicles. So these 2 vehicles, the tender and engine 2, are water supply vehicles. One is what we call the hose wagon, which is engine 2, has large diameter hose. We drop it in the street. Since we don't have a municipal water supply, we go to water holes and we pull water to our site. That's what engine 2 does. The tender brings 2,600 gallons of water. We drop it into bags, and then we draft out of it and do water supply shuttles. So what we're doing here is we're getting away from 2 systems of water supply, and we're going to a pumper tanker, which is semi-combination of the 2. It limits the large diameter hose operation. It won't be able to do that. That's something we do very rarely now. It's common practice in our neighboring towns to do tanker shuttles, which is when you have a confirmed fire, working fire, the dispatch goes right to an automatic response for shuttles. So Boylston, Bolton, Harvard would dispatch tankers to our location. So our job is to deal with the fire and also run a water supply operation, which is pretty complicated, but that's what we're trained to do. So by getting rid of these 2 engines, we're going to go to 1, and we're going to change our operations, strategies and operations to what is the common theme around. Engine 2 we bought new. It's a small tank with lots of hose. It's been good, but we put about $5,000 into working on the pump unit last year. It's aged. The tender is a surplus Army vehicle that we got through a surplus program. It is not up to modern safety standards. It has seatbelts in it that are out of like a Volkswagen from 1965. It's like a farm operation vehicle. Oh, sorry. What's that? Talk.
I'll call you time now.
Okay, so that's what we're doing, and that's the basis behind it.
Okay, that's being paid for with Highland Commons public safety funds.
So is the 440 net or gross?
440 is it.
So after the trade-ins, that's what the cost. Right. And all of it comes from Highland Commons?
Correct. The tender is not a trade, and the tender is going back to the government. The vacuum unit on the back of it will be sold off. And engine 2 will be traded again. It's going to be a clean sale.
Yeah, so there is some trade-in value for some of the equipment, but most of it. You're returning, one of the vehicles is almost as old as I am. Not quite.
Jeez.
Yes, I know. Look who's talking. Okay. Fire EMS self-contained breathing apparatus. This is the air equipment that firefighters wear when they go into a building where there's a fire, so they have air to breathe and don't pass out or get poisoned. I do want to say the town couldn't afford to buy all the replacements that the fire department needs at this annual town meeting. The full replacement cost would be about $300,000, give or take a bit. We were able to get together $90,000, and I went down to the fire station to talk with the interim chief and the interim deputy chief to see what they would be comfortable with based on what money we could raise. We will have to come back next year with additional funding to get them enough bottles and racks and all the apparatus that they need to be able to carry the bottles and breathe in, etc. But this will serve for now, and it's what we can afford. So we're going for $90,000 from that. Any questions about that?
Yeah, what's the life expectancy of these systems? This seems like an article that comes up periodically. I just don't recall how periodically or what the...
Jim, if I recall from what you told me, that the life cycle of one of those tanks is about 5 or 6 years?
They can be restarted. They checked, tested, but they can only last so long, and the vessels actually will break down, the coating around them. So that's when they become a hazard. And
yeah, there are regulations around how long they can use them, and when they hit the end of that life, they're required to drill a hole in them and get rid of them, because there's a risk of the tank exploding from metal fatigue, etc.
So about how many years is the cycle?
I think it's about 5 or 6 from what Jim was telling me.
At the most, it's 10, but they have to be constantly retested, pressure tested, and they do break down, the materials do
Yeah.
break down.
So you're correct, it does come around about every 5 to 10 years. Right now, their stock is very low, and this will get them through until the next time we're able to give them some money. Any other questions about that? Okay. Article 22, Fire and EMS miscellaneous equipment. Jim, can you speak to this one? Because I certainly don't know what the miscellaneous equipment is.
Miscellaneous equipment is everything from turnout gear to hose, which hose does fade out, does dry out, and gets dangerous. If you heard what happened in Boston, the hose actually broke down with firefighters in Boston. There's an incredible amount of pieces that go into firefighting, from nozzles, reducers, adapters. When we go mutual aid, they have to have, it's like, anyone wants to come in anytime and take a look, I'll run you through the inventory.
Yeah, the tour is actually kind of fun. I felt like, I was looking for the delegation, and they don't have one.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions about that? Here is a series of unpaid bills. One of my favorite things to gripe about. From fire and from the select board. Some of these came in after the end of the fiscal year, so the vendor didn't submit the invoice in a timely fashion. I think that's actually the case with all of these. The Finance Committee has been talking with the treasurer and the town accountant, and we're going to be addressing all the various town departments and town committees and commissions this coming budget cycle to try to help them communicate to their vendors what the deadlines are, how to get the town to pay them on a timely basis, and not have these things keep showing up on the warrant. But that's what those are. Any questions about those? Okay. Article 28 is a police cruiser. Again, these are on a regular schedule to be replaced. You may know that the Crown Victoria, was that a Ford vehicle?
27?
Oh, did I skip one? I'm sorry. No, it's 27 is an unpaid bill as well.
That's not what's in the warrant.
Well, what does the warrant say on your page? Because I printed this out from the warrant on the site.
Okay, 27 on the town report is library well compliance.
Library what?
Library well compliance.
Are you sure you're looking at the right warrant?
Number.
Number 27.
That's what I'm looking at. Yes, I'm sure I'm looking at the correct
Okay,
warrant.
mine says selectmen unpaid prior year bills.
Okay.
Does anybody, other people say that?
Well, you hated it out, so yes.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
not what's in the
Well, Noel, I thank you for letting me know. Noel's my partner, so I can get exasperated with it. I'm going to move along because there's nothing about the well in the warrant, to the best of my knowledge. It's just the septic system for the library. Okay, so Article 28 is a replacement police cruiser. We've moved to a particular model of SUV that holds its value and that we can then sell used after an appropriate number of years of use, since the Crown Victoria, to the dismay of many police departments, has gone away. Any questions about that? Yep.
Is that going to be a 2020 model or 2019?
I do not know.
2020 model is completely redesigned and a far better vehicle.
Communicate that to Tom Galvin, if you'd be so kind.
He does pay pretty close attention though, and I know he was aware that there was a new green model coming. So my guess is that he's got his eye on it, but definitely let him know.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Article 29, police radios, tasers, and active shooter equipment for $15,000. Any questions about that one? Basically, the police wanted to have an option in between nightstick and pistol that is, in current parlance, less lethal. That's what the tasers are about.
So what's the active shooter component?
I don't know. I know the school is putting in equipment related to, the schools are putting in equipment related to active shooters. I don't know if this is that. So I'm not sure. We just looked at the prices to make sure that it matched up, but I didn't ask what the specific purpose was. Okay. Anything else about that? Okay. Article 30 is the stabilization fund. It has been a few years. The stabilization fund, for those that might not know, is the town's savings account in case we run into, during tight economic times, town receipts go down, we can't fully fund everything we want to in the budget. The stabilization fund is there to make sure that vital town services remain funded when we're under economic pressure. And one thing I said I really wanted to do when I was made chair of the Finance Committee is put substantial money in the stabilization fund. And so we're going to be doing that over the next several years because the budget has increased while we haven't been putting money in stabilization. So, any questions about that? Okay. Energy Committee Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. Mr. Wysocki, do you want to say something about that?
So last year we had an article that was also addressing this problem that didn't pass muster with Barry or with June. Since that time, I believe through the Municipal Modernization Act, we've been given the option of using a stabilization fund. This would establish a stabilization fund for the purposes of funding energy efficient improvements to the town in conjunction with our responsibilities under the Green Community Act, which we adopted. The article that immediately follows this one is related. That takes funds that have already been collected through our municipal aggregation funds. It's 1/10 of a penny per kilowatt hour is paid by people who participate in that program. The program typically underruns the national grid standard rate. So in a way that's putting money back into the town, which would be used to fund initiatives that would ultimately save taxpayer dollars.
Folks have questions about that? Okay.
So this is a conceptual thing, not a cost. There's no cost right now. What do you mean by cost? Is there a budget line? Is there a cost to doing this?
The cost is not borne by taxpayers.
Right, so there's no.
If you use municipal aggregation, there's a very small infinitesimal adder on there that accumulates, and that money will go into this fund in order to fund further green projects that bring money back.
That adder was run through 2018, and $4,000 was accumulated into the general fund. With the second article, what we're asking for is permission to take from the general fund those funds that were accumulated through the adder and put it into the stabilization fund. Does that make sense? And then, should any funds wish to be withdrawn from that for the purposes of a project, that also requires a town meeting approval. So this is a savings.
Okay. Is Peg, I see Peg back there in a rocking chair, looks very comfy. Can I get you out of it?
Pardon me?
Could I get you out of it? Because Week Chief is next.
Okay.
So the next Article 33, would be to change the town fire chief from strong chief to weak chief. And here's Peg.
Strong chief and weak chief, I've talked about it a few times at the coffee talks that we've had that I brought it up. I wanted to give Berlin an opportunity to move away from our current strong chief to a potential weak chief. I've reached out to get a simple table on the definition of weak chief, strong chief, reached out to the Fire Academy, couldn't get one, reached out to the Secretary of State, didn't have one, reached out to our consulting firm is doing the search, they don't have one. There's basically two differences, strong chief, weak chief. Strong chief is if you wish to terminate a strong chief, you need to do so for just cause, and a hearing must be held. So before the question is asked, oh, where'd you go? Hold, please. No, I'm looking up the definition for just cause. I had it written down. Just cause is a legally sufficient reason. That's not the one I want. I wrote it down. Did you always have backup? Just cause is misconduct of an employee which justifies the immediate termination of the employment contract. Sufficient reason is given for termination for immediate dismissal with no notice and no severance. Compared to a weak chief, where a weak chief can be terminated at will, for a cause. Definition of a cause is a severe error in action or judgment. So there's one major difference. Strong chief, weak chief. Strong chief also has the ability to hire, fire, promote, etc. within the department with zero oversight. He or she can pretty much do as they will when it comes to bringing people on or removing people from the force. A weak chief will need to have the support of the Board of Selectmen to bring up, hey, I want to hire Sally. Sally meets the requirements. What do you think? Hey, Sally's really bad. We got to get rid of Sally. Here's the requirements. What do you think? So those are the two main differences between strong chief, weak chief. Questions? I see hands. Hang on. I know what you're going to ask. Hang on. Yes,
I just have a question. Do you feel that under the strong chief that it's been abused, or is there a particular reason you feel we have to do that?
Yes. And again, what I saw with our former chief, several of his actions to me constituted abuse of power and also mismanagement of the budget. If you've listened to any of the selectmen meetings, watched it, where interim chief Kincannon has come up, that budget is pretty much on life support right now. To me, there were some items that were purchased, some oversight that did not happen, which I'm going to assume is leading us into this position as to where we are with the budget. And before Mrs. Concannon asks, very wise woman in the audience, we had brought this up at a selectmen meeting, and Tricia, obviously, asked if I would talk to the fire department. I spoke with Jim, full transparency, and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking, here's my reasoning. He and I had a wonderful conversation. I asked for permission to speak to his staff. Again, full transparency, I'm not pulling punches, I don't have a hidden agenda. I'm not on a power trip to add more power to the selectmen, if anybody views it that way. It was just trying to gather facts. I did speak with several firemen. I'm going back on Friday to speak with several more. I will not tell you who I spoke with, and I will not tell you the context of our conversation. To me, that's confidential, kind of like an executive session. Only those parties who were in the room at the time know exactly what's going on and what was said. So, as any good leader will do, I'm gathering facts and gathering information. I've reached out to different organizations as well to talk to them. So what I plan on doing is standing up at the meeting and providing it to the entire town. So you can decide if you want to stay as strong chief or if we need to move to weak chief. I realize that there could be an impact to our current search for a new chief. That's also being taken into consideration. I've spoken with MRI about it as well and gotten their input. So just trying to get a balanced view of what it is. I'm done.
Okay, thoughts, comments about that? Yes.
I actually have a different question. Given that we are in a search for a new chief right at the moment, it seems like I'd be concerned. I'm concerned about the timing of it. And are you concerned at all in the quality of the chief that will be coming in? Because most chiefs would not like to work as a weak chief. I'm just putting that out there. So it's been said that we are going to get a lesser quality chief if we pass the weak chief, strong chief.
Not necessarily. The consultant that I spoke with, he was a former strong chief. He was also a charter chief, so there's a third distinction, but since Berlin doesn't have a charter, it doesn't really count. He personally said that he didn't care if he was a strong chief or if he was a weak chief, he was there to do a job. He gave me some information on potential impact to candidates because they saw the job description and it did say strong chief. But, you know, obviously he can't say anything until the town passes or until we don't pass. this. Does he think that it's going to have an impact? Honestly, Tricia, he doesn't know. And I asked him, because if it did, then I would pull it, because I wouldn't want to impact the town. But he said some folks that he's talked to, again, say share the same feeling as him. It's a job, it's the person in the job, it's not the description of the job, so.
Well, that brings me to my next point. I think the candidate is more important here.
Agreed.
And if we get the right candidate, then I don't think we need to have a weak chief. I think the right candidate for the job, being a strong chief, would be the perfect person.
Correct, and the problem is that, the problem is that prior to our interim chief and our interim deputy chief, there were some things going on that should not have been going on. And anybody in this room, if you've been listening, knows what was going on. Since we've put Mr. Kincannon in place and Jamie, does it tell?
Yes.
Hadley? Yeah.
You got it.
Things have turned around. So that's also been input, which is taken into consideration. We could have a strong chief and we could get an awesome person. And then 90 days, into the contract, the person isn't as good. So I can't promise you that even if we stay as strong chief, that we're gonna have a dynamite person. And I can't promise you if we stay as strong chief, we're gonna have a not dynamite person. It's all in whoever passes in. Hang on, Lisa's got one.
I just have a quick comment. If there was abuse of power, that is cause for firing your strong chief. So that's not really a good reason to go to weak chief, because if they're abusing their power, you can fire them because you have cause.
Correct, but I was just explaining the definition, which needs to be just cause. Wait a minute, hang on, Peter had one.
So, first off, my impression is it was a failed experiment having a strong chief. But more importantly, we've got a police department that functions as a weak chief, with a weak chief in a very balanced manner. And the downside that Trish points out to having perhaps less candidates or less qualified candidates should not be the decision maker. The decision maker should be what is right for the town, strong or weak, and then which applicant is the best applicant for the town. If we can't find a weak chief candidate that suits us, that's qualified, something's wrong. We don't live in Alaska. We don't live in the hinterlands. We don't live in the Samoa Islands. We live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There's plenty of candidates in the region, in the state, in New England. And I think there's 40-odd candidates now. Does that sound right?
No,
There were 17 to
24.
24. That's not insignificant.
For the strong chief.
Well, no.
Okay, hold on. Peter, why don't you finish? And then if people have comments, I'll go to you next, whoever they have.
So if the candidate is not aware that there's a question on the town meeting about strong weak, they're uninformed and they've not done their due diligence. So while it is strong now, it's definitely a question that they should know that is coming up for debate and decision. And 24 candidates, if we can't find one in the Commonwealth, something's wrong.
I think it was one
Other
of the
folks? Go ahead.
The question that I have is, you draw a black and white line between strong chief, weak chief. But it would seem to me that as past CEO of multiple companies that have to deal with board of directors like a select board, is that it's all about the contract. You draw with that chief. If you want a backstop where if something's really going wrong, you have the ability to sit in and make some decisions or override, versus trying to micromanage something that the select board, I don't think is qualified to do.
No, see, and that's a misconception. With a strong chief, they hold ultimate power. So the selectmen can sit in, and often we were not asked to sit.
So the contract that's drawn up
It's a contract for a strong chief, and everything under the Mass General laws that fall under strong chief. Just as if it goes to weak chief, it will be a contract written for all the laws that fall under Mass General law for that. So
the contract's already written by the state.
Correct. So there are no stipulations that we can put in and say, hey, you're a strong chief, I really don't care. I'm going to be part of your application process. And the chief says, yeah, good luck, get up. Okay. Jim?
So I have a couple of comments, but I'm not going to go anyone on this side here. Firefighter's job is to control chaos, okay? You call the fire department when there's a chaotic event going on. Our job is to come in, control it, okay? We run paramilitary, okay? We utilize the chain of command. We come into an operation, a house fire, for instance, a car accident, someone's injured. We run chain of command, okay? We cannot be hindered by political pressure to do our job, okay? The people I have, I need to trust, I need to count on, and I need to know they can do their job, okay? I can't worry about hurting somebody's feelings at that time. My job is to help the civilians, get them the help, put out the fire, and get the job done. Make sure my people aren't hurt, okay? This isn't simple as a CEO position, okay? The burden here is on the town to contract, to due diligence on the person they hire, okay? Shorten the contract term, interview with police, interview with people that are good at reading personalities, look at history. There's multiple ways to look back, okay? Hire the right person. It's on us to hire the right person. First of all, it's a very hard job to do. It's a very dirty job to do, okay? If we weaken the job of chief, we're going to put ourselves at risk. That's my feeling.
I'd like to move on from this if we may. Do you have something really? Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, are you okay with it?
I won't discuss that tonight.
I don't
Will
think so.
there be special consideration for a person that resides in Burlington?
The question, and this would be, I guess, a select board question, is will there be special consideration for a person who resides in Berlin?
We have requested that whoever gets the job be within a certain radius. I think you really need to look at the candidates. We have a screening firm who will give the board 3 candidates. Those that go to the screening committee will come from the screening firm. They've already whittled those down to 9 that will come to the screening committee. But basically, we ask that they be within a certain radius of the town so that they're close enough to respond to calls. I don't remember do you remember the mileage? 10 to 15 miles.
Judy, we're gonna hire the best person for the job, regardless if they live down the road or if they live 20 miles away. You know, whoever that person is, he or she will need to take care of us in the town of Berlin. So unfortunately, there really can't be a special consideration. Here's the job, here's the requirements, what do you got?
You're also asking somebody to move, you may be asking somebody to move into a 10 to 15 mile radius. And then, on the other hand, you're telling them that you can fire them without cause, or not without cause, but you can fire them when you feel like it, basically.
If there's not any other really burning question I'd like to move on in the interest of time, because we haven't even gotten, for instance, to cannabis yet. Well, it's both nights, actually. Although tonight will be far shorter, I imagine. Okay. Article 34 is a change in the tax collector demand fee. Basically, Dennis Fairbay, who's the town treasurer, has asked to change the demand fee for late tax payments, like on your, what do you call the taxes on cars? I can't bring the word to mind. Excise, thank you. On excise taxes, if you pay them late, this is the demand fee. This would cause it to go up by $5. I think it's currently $10. Dennis sat and did math and said, it isn't worth our time to deal with the $10 fee. If it becomes $15, then it's worth our time. And he feels like it'll motivate people more. Any questions about that? Okay. Article 25, the Planning Board, Senior Residential Development. Is there anybody here from the Planning Board?
They're having their
Oh, they're having their meeting. I was unkind to the Planning Board and made it impossible for them to be here. All right, because honestly, I don't know. I'm going to read you the summary of what this says. Because I have to be honest and say, I'm not well educated on this one. This article eliminates a conflict in the zoning bylaw. Section 730 requires all new developments of 6 or more units to have 15% of the units affordable. To be counted as affordable, there cannot be an age restriction on children. This article will remove the under 18 age restriction for senior residential developments. That make sense? Let me put I thought I saw hands go up, but I'm blind right now. Chris, yes. Do you want the? You don't have to, go ahead.
So this will help the planning board as far as the senior residential development that's up on Highland Street. They had an affordable component, but it could not be counted unless they took this action.
Okay.
Yes. And any other senior residential
Okay.
development.
So this is to make sure then, if I'm understanding correctly, that any affordable units in a senior residential development in Berlin are able to be counted against our affordable housing requirement. Okay. Wow, I got it right more or less. Good.
But the state has changed
Yes.
their approach to that.
Yes.
That regulation is the new one that they've created.
Okay.
And therefore, the planning board wants to make sure that we can count all the units that we possibly can.
Okay. Any questions about that? All right. Name change, I think the next one is Article 36, name change, Board of Selectmen to Select Board. Is there anyone who would like to speak to that? Join me. This is looking at me like, you can do it.
You can do it.
Okay, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's a proposal to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. That's pretty much what it would do.
Keep reading.
Oh, you want me to read the whole thing? Do you want me to read the whole article, Barry?
Keep reading.
To see if the town will vote to amend the town bylaws to substitute the term Board of Selectmen throughout with the term Select Board. And the words Select Man, Select Men, Select Woman, or Select Women with the words Select Board Member or members of the Select Board in each and every place they appear in the town bylaws, etc., etc. Okay.
Do you know how many times that appears in the town bylaw?
I'm sure it's quite a few. I'm sure it is. Okay.
You can really just do a blanket.
It'll be an itty-bitty thing to do.
Well, we'll have to decide if people want to do it in the first place, and then if they do, then we'll have a task to do.
It's really just a language update. When the board was named, women couldn't even vote. I think it's probably time, considering we have 3 women on the board, to make a change.
Okay. I'm sure there will be a full and frank discussion of this at town meeting. If not, I'd be quite shocked. So could I move on now, since we know what it's about, which is basically what I think tonight's about. I'm not seeing any hands flying up. I'm surprised, but thank you. All right, Article 37. I sense Barry rising from his chair. Amend general bylaw, warrants, annual town reports. Or to see if the town will vote to amend Town of Berlin General Bylaw Article 2, Town Meetings, the Warrant, and Town Reports by deleting sections 3 and 12 in their entirety and inserting in place thereof the following new sections 3 and 12. I'm just going to read this because I'm not sure I'll get the nuances right if I try to summarize it because I don't know it well. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, General Law, Chapter 39, Section 10. All right, glasses off.
Just keep going, just keep going.
Yes, keep going. The lawyer says keep reading, I'm doing fine. Good, thank you. Attested copies of the warrant for each town meeting shall be posted at the town offices, the 1870 Town Hall, and at the post office in the town at least 7 days prior to the annual town meeting, and at least 14 days before any special town meeting. The selectmen shall cause the warrant for the annual town meeting and the report of the finance committee to be printed and posted on the town webpage. At least 5 days before the day fixed in the warrant for the annual town meeting, the selectmen shall cause to be delivered or mailed to each voting household in the town a copy of the warrant for said meeting and the report of the finance committee. At least 14 days before the day fixed in the warrant for each special town meeting, the selectmen shall cause a copy of the articles in the warrant for said meeting to be mailed to each voting household in the town. And next section to be replaced, Section 12. The selectmen shall cause a copy of the annual town report to be printed and posted on the town website for public use, with printed copies to be made available at the town offices, or take any action thereto. Now, I do want to clarify one thing, because at the bottom it says, Finance Committee recommends this action. Now, I didn't get a chance to poll my colleagues beforehand, so I'm going to ask them now. It is my belief, but see if you agree with me, that we voted to sponsor this article so that it could be on the warrant, but that we did not make a recommendation. Is that? Yeah, that's fine. So I think there's actually an error here in the sense that the Finance Committee agreed to sponsor this so that it could be on the warrant, because there wasn't a body sponsoring it, and to be on the warrant, some official town organ has to say, yes, we will sponsor that. We agreed to do that, but we're not recommending passage or rejection of this. We just felt that there are people in town who are interested in this action and that we should facilitate it being discussed and decided on. So we're not recommending yes or no, for clarity's sake. Dave, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm one of the people in town, Dave Westerling, 196 Lincoln Street. I'm one of the people in town who thought about this and said we should at least start discussing it. The way I worded the support for this is that for those people who wanted the traditional report mailed, right now it's mailed to every household, that we would have some mechanism for them to continue that. It wouldn't be taking away that option. But for those people who wanted just a PDF version on their computer or downloaded from the web, that was maybe the preferred way for those folks. So we would have two ways of distributing the annual town report. But for some people in town, the traditional way of getting the report, that's what they're used to. They're Berlin residents, and we would not want to change that. So there would have to be some mechanism for getting those folks who want the printed town report just as it is now. It could be through the town census that we do every January 1st, a checkoff box. If you want the town report printed and mailed to you, we will continue to do that forever, okay? But for a lot of people in town, they would prefer to get a PDF copy or download it from the website. We could email a PDF copy if we had email addresses. But in some fashion, we would want those folks in town that wanted a printed copy of the annual town report to continue to receive it. We just need a way of doing that. And again, as Buzz said, we thought this was at least a discussion point where we could start a discussion. And there are different views on this for sure, but we probably would arrive at some consensus.
Okay, thoughts, questions about this?
I think at least part of the reason that this is on the warrant is because if you look at the number of people who come to town meeting, it's what, under 300? Is that about right? And we send out something like 1,400 of these. While I understand that there are people who don't come to town meeting who probably still want the report, I think it's significantly less than 1,400. And you see a lot of these in the recycle bin after they're mailed out. So I think it would be great to reduce the waste and the cost in that regard by taking steps to not mail it to every single person in town when they don't necessarily want a paper copy.
Other folks? Okay. Some of us may be keeping our powder dry until town meeting. Do you wish?
If you want to continue to get the town report mailed to you and be assured that everybody will get it, vote no. And that's how you keep an informed electorate to make sure everybody gets the information in their hands. I'm well aware that some people aren't going to use it, but there are a lot of people who wouldn't even know it existed if it didn't arrive on their doorstep. So this is the way to have an educated and informed electorate in the town.
Anybody else? Yes.
I like Dave's idea of having a checkbox on the census. I think that's a great way to request it if you want it, because I like having it mailed. But I also understand that if half the people are throwing them away immediately, it is a waste. It's a waste of resources and money. So maybe a way for people to request it is a good idea.
Yeah, and the budget and the warrant still get mailed to your doorstep. Either way.
Are you waiting in the wings?
I think I'm just gonna sit down.
Okay. Yes, Peter.
One approach that would be more satisfactory to both sides, and I'm in favor of eliminating all this waste, and I agree with what Lisa said 100%, is an opt-out approach. The default is you get a printed copy, but those of us that want to opt out can, and that would probably satisfy someone like Barry more the other way around.
I think you'd still end up with accidentally a lot of
I
people
agree,
getting it,
but it's an alternative.
I will share, if I may. I will cease now being a moderator and move over here and make a comment. Got it? Good. Okay. There was a discussion at the Finance Committee about one possibility, should this pass, that we maintain the town report committee that currently exists and use the town census as the tool to determine people's preferences and ensure that the folks working on the town report committee facilitate the production and mailing, et cetera, of the reports to folks that will continue to receive the paper report. So that's just something that we discussed as a possibility. Okay, I'm the moderator again now. Anything else before we move on? Okay, thank you. By the way, thank you all for being civil with one another. I appreciate it. I mean, it's my experience in Berlin that that's frequently the case, but not always. So I want to thank you for that. We haven't gotten everything yet, I know. You still have a chance, don't worry. If you're a troublemaker, I'm not cutting you out. Okay. Amend snow removal bylaw. What I'm going to do is read the summary on this one, because unless somebody from the select board who knows it better than I do would like to summarize it.
Basically, people push snow into the middle of the road, and the highway department would really appreciate it if that happened.
Okay, so what Lisa said, if you didn't hear her, is that folks occasionally, after the roads have been plowed, will push snow from their sidewalks, driveways into the road. This would amend the town bylaw to say, please don't do that.
There's a loophole that this is closing.
Okay, this is closing a loophole for that problem. Any questions about that?
So just to be clear, what you're both saying is it's going from after a snowstorm to at any time. So if somebody has a pile of snow in their refrigerator right now, in their freezer, and puts it in the middle of the road, it's a violation.
Yes, but Peter, you're a suspicious fellow.
You know.
Yes, it would cover any time. Okay, anything else about that? All right.
That's cool.
Conservation Commission single-use bag ban. I'm going to ask Carolyn, Chair of the Conservation Commission, to get out of her not rocking chair and come up here if she'd be so kind. See, I really did invite people. I just didn't realize some of them were having meetings at the same time. My apologies.
I hate the microphone. Single-use plastic bag. Single-use plastic bag ban. I have been working with the town of Hudson for both towns to do this as a joint venture. Obviously, it needs to be voted on separately. For Berlin, it wouldn't make much of an impact if Hudson didn't also do it as well. There's a handful of stores, BJ's doesn't even have bags, Cabela's does, the bank doesn't, so most of the stores that use plastic bags up at Highland Commons are actually in Hudson. I went to the Hudson Selectmen's meeting when they have a citizens group called Green Hudson that has taken this on. The Conservation Commission in Hudson is going to sponsor it on their fall warrant. Their spring warrant had already closed by the time we started talking about this in February. Went to a selectmen's meeting in Hudson with Green Hudson. They were very much in favor. So we would appreciate the support for this.
Do you have an idea of which way they're going to go? Do you know?
Definitely the selectmen were very much in favor. Where we wrote the bylaw in a way that would also work for Hudson. When you get the warrant, you'll notice it has a very long rollout date for us. I believe we did either December I think, December of this year, because Hudson won't be able to vote on it until the fall of this year. So that will give, especially up in Highland Commons, it will give notice that Berlin has passed it for the stores to start gearing up for it. I've spoken to several people who work at stores up there. They all know this is coming. All of the stores, I think there's 2 stores in Hudson out of every retail outlet in Hudson that doesn't have another location that already has a plastic bag ban. So all of the stores know how to do it. They are geared up for it in some capacity. So
Over 100 communities in Massachusetts have already passed something similar. We're by no means jumping on this first.
there is a statewide ban that is being talked about at the state level. This is the second time it's come up. The thinking in the people who are doing this at a local level is the more communities in the state that pass it, the more likely it is to pass at a state level.
Yeah, we need a critical mass in order for it to pass at the state level.
Okay. Questions, thoughts? Okie dokie, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
All right. I believe the next one is Article 40. Am I tracking correctly? Creation of Community Preservation Act Committee. This is one sponsored by the Finance Committee, and so I'll give a quick explanation. This is, as you may recall, last year the town passed the Community Preservation Act. Everybody basically remember what that is? It is a way for the town to raise money to take care of historic preservation, open space preservation, some other issues, affordable housing. There were 3 or 4 total. Oh, and outdoor recreation. We get state matching funds for it, et cetera, et cetera. That's been passed by the town last year. This is the legislation that creates the local committee that is envisioned under the law for communities that pass, as we have, CPA. The committee will be appointed by various bodies in town enumerated in the law. The committee will do a survey of the town to educate them on the issues, and then it will accept applications for folks that want to take on projects related to one of the 4 purposes permitted under the monies from the Community Preservation Act. So historic preservation, outdoor recreation, affordable housing, and I'm going to forget one. What's the other one?
Conservation.
Conservation, thank you. Yes, open space preservation. Carolyn's giving me the dirty look. She's like, wah! So that is what it is. This is just creating the bylaw that creates that committee in town. Any questions about that?
Go back and mention the other step, that this committee will give recommendations to the town meeting.
Yes.
And that the town meeting then votes on those uses.
Sorry, yes. So the committee receives the grant applications, they review them, determine which ones they think are meritorious, and they then pass those recommendations on to town meeting, and town meeting are the ones who decide which projects actually get funded. Thank you, Barry. And it's long, so I'm flipping pages. Okay. Article 41 is tax title land parcels to selectmen. Could someone from the select board say what this is? Because I vaguely know, but I don't want to get it wrong.
There was a meeting amongst some different parties, the treasurer, the conservation, the planning board, just members that sat down, and we're looking at some different pieces of land. These were pieces that the group decided would be best to go to the selectmen, and then there was the other one was conservation.
Okay, so these are parcels of land in town that are, because of tax reasons, either going to the selectmen to decide what to do with them. Huh?
Exactly.
Yes, or go to the Conservation Commission for them to do something with them, like, oh, I don't know, make them open space, preserve them. I think they do. Carolyn's not paying attention, so she doesn't know. I was just picking on you, it doesn't matter.
That's okay, what was the question?
It wasn't a question, I was only picking on you. Okay. Next is Article 43, I think. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
I have a question.
In regards to,
Park for
oh. Go right ahead, sorry.
I'm curious why it's only control of the select board specifically and not to conservation. I ordered this particular piece of property and it concerns me. If it were conservation, I wouldn't really have a concern.
Okay.
But I am concerned that it's going under the control of the select board.
Okay.
It seems from the map that it connects two pieces of open space. So if there was a discussion that was among, I'm curious as to why.
Sure.
And why it wasn't made public as to why they wanted those two particular pieces of parcel, not specifically under conservation, but under civil.
Okay, is there someone, Chris, do you feel able to answer that? Or?
I can answer.
Oh, yeah. Chris, is it okay with you if Carolyn answers?
Okay.
Why don't we go to Carolyn, and then I'll come back to you if you have
No,
things to add.
I was just going to say that I
Oh,
know
go ahead.
that these two lots are small enough that they would not be able to constitute a buildable lot.
I understand that, but as I said, they do seem to connect two pieces of open space and makes it a much larger piece of property. And again, because it says the control of the select board, that's where my concern is. If it was conservation committee, I wouldn't have as much of a concern, but because it specifically says control of select board, that is my concern.
Okay. I don't know if Carolyn had anything to add as far as.
Okay.
It actually says right here on the summary that they are used as a dead end and currently used by highway and to safely turn around when plowing snow.
Correct, and if it was
This is
under
not
the
something
highway,
that
I wouldn't have
conservation
a
didn't
concern.
want these pieces, so otherwise they would have gotten them.
But again, why is there a connection?
Well, Carolyn,
Town purposes.
go ahead and answer.
I was just saying, it's not even that conservation did or didn't want them, but that the town uses them and the town needs them. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure, what Carolyn said was, it is not a question of, in her mind, whether conservation wanted or didn't want them, but the town currently uses them and does need them. That was her response. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the usage is gonna change at all from what it's used for now. I don't think the usage is gonna change at all from what it's already used for right now. I don't think you're gonna see anything.
Right, again, but if it's in
built there
control
or-
of the highway department, I might not have had a concern based upon the summary down the bottom, but because it's a select board and the proximity to two large pieces of open space, that's my concern.
Okay. You good for now?
Yep,
Okay.
going on to Article 14.
Understood, thank you. Sorry I missed you. Okay. Article 42 is basically the same issue, it's just tax title land that's going directly to the Conservation Commission. Anything about that? Questions, thoughts? Yes, Peter.
So there's some of these lots are larger, 3 acres, 2 acres, 4 acres. Why are they not being sold to the highest bidder? Because they're buildable.
Okay, yeah, Peter's
Well,
point.
are they buildable, are they landlocked? We don't know anything about them.
Okay. Chris and or Carolyn want to respond to that? 'Cause I certainly don't.
I'll try to bring them out. That is a good thing. So basically, Dennis gave us a list of all of the tax title land. He's trying to clean up the tax title stuff in town. And we went through and looked at the location of the lots to see if they are, one of our goals is to increase connectivity, not just to have a lot here, a lot here, a lot here, but if this little lot connects these two larger pieces of conservation land, then it was something that we were interested in. So we then gave him a list of, out of the list that he gave us, probably just about half, maybe a little less, of lots that we would be interested in for that reason.
These are those half.
These are those, exactly. And the rest of them, we were like, nope, do whatever. I mean, we're not interested in conservation land for the sake of a plot of land. Is it environmentally sensitive, or does it, connect other lots?
But don't we have to ask the fiscal question, is it fiscally responsible not to sell those lots that are saleable?
They've been sitting.
But who knows that they're sitting?
Well, I'm sure Dennis will be able to speak to how long they have been sitting. They're tax title owners, so they are sitting.
I understand that,
They
but
haven't been
Okay, can we
contributing to
let
the
Caroline
town.
finish it off and back?
Right, they haven't been contributing tax dollars to the town for some time.
I understand that, but I'm being devil's advocate. What if, say, a 1927 3.63 on Allen Road, what if that piece of property connects somebody else's property and they would like to buy it to make their property larger? Well, how would that person know that that opportunity could exist?
I would imagine that if somebody
These are tax.
was in that situation, would have approached Dennis about the property and.
How would you know though? I'm just learning about this now. How would you know?
Okay, there's another comment over here. Walt, go ahead.
So in reading the warrant, it says that these are lots that were reviewed by the tax title team and determined not likely developable because of size, environmental problems, or multiple failed perks. I assume that means percolation tests.
Yes.
So we're talking about parcels, presumably, that somebody decided were unlikely to be able to be developed. That's why they're of interest.
No, is that a developer that made that decision, or a town leader?
According to this, it is the tax title team, whoever that amounts to.
And just another thing to keep in mind is the town in general has indicated very strongly that they're interested in pursuing conservation land. So if it made sense for conservation, I'm thinking that most of the town would probably support that.
Okay. Would it make sense, Carolyn, Chris, et cetera, to share some information about these prior to town meeting or at town meeting?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll share some further information so there can be more discussion about it.
As Carolyn said, there are many more
Okay.
that aren't on either list.
Should we try to sell them at town meeting?
Perhaps.
We can have, auction.
I'll wait for the auction.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting a frowny, I'm getting a look from Barry, so that means no, I think. Okay, thank you. Next, Article 43 is Conservation Commission Peach Hill Acquisition. Carolyn, can I call on you again? All I know is how much it costs and where the money's coming from. That may or may not be much.
So this is the Wendler property on Peach Hill. It's the second property in from the Bolton Town line on the western side of the street. And we would like to buy it for $130,000.
And the finance committee went and looked in their bank account and found that they have the money.
More?
So we said, yeah, they actually have more than that by a bit. So we decided, sure, go ahead. Any questions about that? Thoughts about that? Yes, sir.
Is the reason it's going to town meeting that we want to apply for self-help money?
Correct. And the state now requires, and we've done this with the last several purchases, we just need a town meeting vote that says the town agrees that it's a good thing.
Okay, anything else? Not seeing anything, I'm going to go ahead. Article 44, I think, is next. POTUS Solar Array Pilot Agreement. Should I just hand this over to you rather than giving a hand-handed approximation of what it means?
This will just give the selectmen the ability to negotiate a pilot agreement with the POTUS family.
Okay. And pilot means payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
It's usually with a nonprofit or some other entity that may or may not automatically be subject to the town's taxes, and so you have a negotiation with them.
Right. We're in the process of working on it, but of course, we need permission from the town meeting to do the actual decision making.
Okay. Any questions about that? Thoughts about that? I know we're running a bit over, which doesn't surprise me. I'll try to get rid of, not rid of, is there's a senior residential, oh, there's stuff left. Okay. Senior, Article 45, Senior Residential Development Overlay District. To see if the town will, actually before I do this, does anyone know about this one? Because I can just read it to you. I don't know the story behind it.
It's a citizen's petition.
Ah, okay.
So-
Is it related to the development in the gravel?
It is.
Gravel?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is a citizen's petition related to a development that would be placed in the, what's the name of the gravel and sand thing?
Worcester Sand and Gravel.
Worcester Sand and Gravel. How hard was that, Buzz, really? Okay. That would enable them to develop this in the way that they would like to. So, any questions about that? That's really about all I know. Yes?
Is this anything that is allowed because we're not up to the 40B standard yet, or?
We are actually, we have our 40B numbers.
Because they've started digging down at the,
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, good.
Mr. Grenier came in and talked to us at the EDC, so, or the Economic Development Committee, so we know a little bit about it, but it's not 40B related.
Right.
So it's a zone, he did come to us, and it's a zoning change that will permit this use. And it's only going to, if passed, it will only permit the use. Were it to be passed, then they would have to make this proper applications to the building department, special permits, planning for it, all that. This is just purely to make it permissible.
Yeah, it would change the zoning here.
Yeah, it would change the zoning for that piece of land. Anything
This
else?
would be a vote to rezone land,
Yes.
which will be a paper ballot and require a 2/3 majority.
Good.
Town bylaw.
Understood. Thank you, sir. So we can look forward to that.
And I'm sure planning will have comments at town meeting.
Yes, I know the planning board has thoughts about this. I actually have thoughts about this because they came and talked to us, but I will save them for town meeting in the interest of time.
So Buzz, the zoning goes from what to what?
Isn't it limited, is that the limited industrial?
It goes from industrial to residential.
Yeah, I only know what is in the bylaw, and it sounds like people are saying it's from industrial to residential.
But you would change
That's limited business. And it will not change that use. It will create an overlay for senior residential.
Okay, so we'll create an overlay, which is an addition to zoning for that piece of land that will allow.
The underlying zoning will stay the same, but it will create an overlay to allow a senior residential.
So what you're saying with that statement, Barry, is that you can still do what you originally were going to be able to do on the what did you call it? Limited industrial.
Yeah.
So you can still do limited industrial, and now we're also going to be adding residential.
We're adding senior residential, which
Senior
is a very
residential.
specific.
Right, okay.
Yes.
But if somebody wanted to come in and take another piece of that property, I'm just hypothetical, they could still do limited industrial.
Limited business, yeah.
Limited.
The problem with the piece of land is all of the buildable land will be used for the senior development, and the non-buildable land, which is way up, it's a hillside,
Yeah, I know
is
that.
impractical for limited.
Okay, I think if we can, I'm going to ask to defer further discussion of that to town meeting, because at least in my mind, maybe because I don't live next to it, it's not like one of the higher temperature items, but I could be surprised. So if that's okay, I'd like to, is that cool? Okay, then Ornella, I think you're on.
This should be the end, right?
Yes, yes, you are the denouement. And what I'd like to do is 5 minutes. Like, I mean, I'll give you a little bit more if you need, because you've got like a pile of articles. You're good? Okay, here you go.
All right, so the last 16 articles at the town meeting were submitted by citizen petition by a coalition of residents in town, and they propose opting out of either all recreational marijuana establishments or selected ones, which is why there's a number of them. But to try to simplify, I guess it would be Article 46 through 53. So the first 8 that we've submitted are the bylaw amendments. And essentially, they're general bylaw amendments opting out of either all types. The next article would be retailers. The next, micro businesses, followed by product manufacturers, research facilities, testing labs, cultivators, and craft cultivators. So it gives the town an opportunity to either decide if they want to opt out of all establishments or whether they want to be selective about it. Now, according to the marijuana law, what we need to do is also ratify those bylaw amendments. So it's a 2-step process. So we amend it on the town meeting floor, you amend the bylaw. Then we're going to have to vote for any one of those bylaws that get passed. We then are going to have to vote on a ballot question that will then go to a ballot election. That's required by the state. So depending on which ones we approve, we then will vote on the ballot questions that we want to move forward to an election at some date to be decided in the future. Does that make sense? So the reason we're doing this is because there is a provision in the law which allows every municipality in the state to exercise their right to either limit or opt out of these establishments. So that's why we're doing it. Are there any questions?
I have a question. So that we voted on all this last year and the town meeting turned it down, so I'm kind of curious as to why it's coming back again when the town meeting. It's, in my view, basically, not, I don't think you're telling me anything different. And I was certainly a supporter of the ability to get up and stand your ground and make your voice heard, but I don't understand why, if the town voted it down and didn't agree with the last year, why it's back again this year. And it just seems like if you didn't get your way, only just coming back till enough people don't show up to get it. That just seems kind of crazy to me.
Well, to speak to that, there's a couple of points. So it is our right to come back, and there has been precedent set in this town for doing that. So it is our right, number one. But honestly, there was enough confusion at the special town meeting that people really did not understand how they needed to vote and what they were voting for. So in the end, what we did do, the planning board did, we did approve a zoning bylaw amendment, which gives us a minimal level of protection in town so that we can at least, we're zoned for these establishments. But unfortunately, once that was approved at the special town meeting, the remainder of their zoning bylaw amendment articles were passed over. So the town really wasn't afforded the opportunity to vote on more restrictive zoning bylaws. And I know that we had a few town residents that did get up and were confused by that. So that's something we'd like to.
And I respected that's your opinion, but I don't think that most of the people there were confused.
Wayne?
That's my
Okay.
Can you?
Yeah.
Can I just-
Sure. Sure.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go this way, so, yes.
I'm just going to say I was very confused at town meeting, so I respectfully disagree with you, Wayne. I found it very confusing, and I'm actually kind of grateful for the opportunity to vote on it again, just to make it clearer.
So, Ornella, you're probably aware of the recent Attorney General ruling, yes?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you want to share with the group what
Absolutely.
that's
I didn't
about?
want to create too much confusion because it's confusing enough as it is. So There are municipal guidelines set forth by the Cannabis Commission, okay? These municipal guidelines guide all the cities and towns as to how to host these recreational marijuana establishments. They also try to guide towns through a process of opting out. Sadly, this language, which was written by the Cannabis Commission, was written in a very nebulous fashion. It created a lot of confusion, was not clear at all. So when cities and towns across the state raised their concerns with the Cannabis Commission, they were guided to pass a minimal restriction, which was to pass a zoning, bylaws to just have a minimum level of protection. They said, go ahead, do that. You go ahead and do that. Then, once you guys figure out what you want to do as a town, go ahead and opt out. And opt out by a bylaw amendment. We're not going to tell you how exactly you need to do that, but just go ahead, opt out by a bylaw amendment. So, most of the towns took that advice. What happened is that the Attorney General just struck down Brewster's opt-out because they did it by a general bylaw amendment. So what she's saying is that once you're zoned in your town for recreational marijuana establishments, sorry, oh yeah, we didn't tell you this, but you can't opt out through a general bylaw amendment. So that was a deception, sadly, that was spread across the state. So there's a lot of towns right now struggling to appeal this, but in the time being, we know that we will likely, if that's not changed, we'll likely need a zoning bylaw amendment as well. So, but we absolutely know that we need a ballot question election. That is necessary. So this two-step process that was laid out for us by the Cannabis Commission explicitly states that you're going to need a ballot question election. So because that is on the warrant, that is an absolutely necessary part of what we need to do. We're still going to move forward with the bylaw amendment simply because we don't know what's going to happen. We do know that the MMA is going to be, there's going to be some pushback from them as well as from other towns across the state. Yes.
So,
Sure.
Hold on.
So yes, I am aware of it, and we are moving forward accordingly, right?
Let me outline what you tried to say in a different way and much simpler, if I may. The Attorney General has struck...
Does he need to? I'm sorry. Does he really need to do that?
Peter, if you want to offer your opinion on the matter, you can, but it sounded like you're going to make Ornella wrong. And I think if you want to offer your opinion, you're absolutely welcome to do that, but please don't say, I'm going to mail. It sounded like you were saying, I'm going to make you wrong.
So, the Attorney General has struck bylaws like this because they're not zoning bylaws.
Only if it's town, is zoned.
So because these are zoning bylaws, had you brought a zoning bylaw then, and it passed, then it would pass muster. But since it won't pass muster, this is an exercise in futility.
That's not true. That's not true. That might be your opinion. And that needs clarification because we should not go into this town meeting with that kind of confusion.
Okay.
I will let me give you a minute to clarify that.
Sure. Okay. So a general bylaw vote will give a vote of confidence to our town leadership, number one. It will also help guide which ballot questions we need to move forward on, because we will need to vote on those. Now, once we move forward with the ballot question, and any of those get approved, we then will need to move forward with the zoning bylaw amendment based on which ballot questions were approved by this town. Many cities and towns have actually opted to do that first, before any bylaw amendment.
Okay, I understand there's disagreement on that point, but that will come up at town meeting, I'm sure. Yes.
Just one thing that was said there was that the Attorney General struck down this. It was actually based on a Worcester County Land Court decision from the town of Charlton. So it's a matter of law, it's not a matter of opinion of the Attorney General. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, so it was an action. It was an action by the Massachusetts State Land Court. It was not an action by the Attorney General for a point of clarification.
No, it actually was. She struck down, the Attorney General struck down the rooster based on the Charlton decision.
That's right.
Right, but they are going to be appealing that. So this is ongoing
So
litigation.
it's going through appeal. True. It has to work its way through the appellate process.
Yeah.
But as of today, this is a matter of law.
Right, but that does not affect the validity of what we will be doing as a town. Like I said, we absolutely need to vote on the bylaw amendment so that we know how to move forward with the ballot question, which is an absolutely critical piece of what we need to do moving forward if we choose to opt out.
I see, I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go over here. Yes, sir.
So, let me understand.
If folks please keep the side conversations a little bit quiet so we can hear this gentleman.
If we do change by approving some of the 16 warrants that you put in, okay, will that expose us to any legal action that the state can take?
No.
We'll need no legal funds to fight this.
No, we're not fighting anything. We're not fighting anything. So there's been some rhetoric that is misleading, but we're not fighting anything. We are exercising our rights. These provisions are allowed in the marijuana law, okay? Many towns across the state have done this. So what we are doing is within our rights, and unless we exercise these rights, the marijuana industry has dictated for us that we must host a 20%, minimum of 20% of our liquor licenses. That's how many marijuana establishments we are required to host. So we have already been told what we need to do. So that's being dictated. First time ever an industry has been able to do this to a town.
Sure. Anybody? Yes. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, you're going to have a forum on question and answer?
Thank you.
Yes, do you want to
yeah, so tomorrow night, if anyone wants to come back to have any further discussion about this, we can dig a little deeper. We're going to have a community conversation here at 7 o'clock. We're going to be joined by our police chief and other board members and town leaders. So if you'd like to return for that, we'll be talking about this at length.
Anything that you cannot wait till tomorrow night? Yes, Angela.
When would the ballot election be?
That will be up to, our town to decide. And I would imagine that if, this is just my opinion, but the greater the margin of, that any one of those bylaws are approved by, it shows a certain vote of confidence within the town. It's like a survey, and if there's a supermajority, then I would think that would initiate a quicker response time for an election, but I also don't know everything else that's involved in that.
I'm actually going to call on myself for once tonight. I have a question. Is there any guidance in the marijuana law or other state regulations you're aware of that say how long after the annual town meeting vote the election will take place?
No.
Okay.
No, it would be prudent for us if we do, if the town has voted to move forward with the election, I would think it would be prudent to do it sooner than later, simply because that would be the town's wishes.
Any last tip? Yes.
In the interest of time, would you be willing to entertain a motion to pass over these articles so that we can have a decision once?
I don't understand the question.
Specifically, would you support a test vote at town meeting where we vote to pass over all these articles to save time at town meeting.
Why would I pass over them?
Because if if Passover passes, it shows that the community was not willing to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I'd have to think about that, but it doesn't sound like something I would be interested in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any last things? I almost thought that was Paul, but he was straightening his glasses. I look for hands going. Okay, then I think, unless there's any last stuff, we are done. Thank you very much for coming this evening. I appreciate it. And if you're interested in the marijuana stuff, again, please come back tomorrow night. Otherwise, thank you.